The following episode of the Maui Chamber of Commerce's Business Matters was originally broadcast on August 11th, 2026.
It's time for Business Matters, brought to you by the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Other perspectives and programming on this station do not necessarily reflect the views, values, or positions of the Maui Chamber of Commerce, which is an independent and inclusive organization serving Maui businesses and the community since 1910. Now here's your host, the Maui Chamber of Commerce President, Pamela Tumpop. Good morning, Pam. How are you today?
I am excellent, Jerry. Good morning. How are you?
Same here. It's a nice, beautiful day. A little muggy, but that's okay.
Oh, well, let's see. I'm indoors, so I haven't felt that yet. But but yes, we'll take the great weather. We've had a little bit of rain, which was nice. And I haven't seen the latest update on the potential hurricane watch. Have you?
I think what I saw is that they're expecting rain here on the weekend. They're thinking it's going to pass south of us. But it'll just bring some rain, which we always need. I've been getting rain about almost every night at my house. Not much, but just to keep it green.
Yeah, we've been about the same in Pukalani, so that's good.
Yeah,
that's good, and avoiding another opportunity for mass flooding is good.
Right.
We'll take a little bit of rain.
Mass flooding and mass fires.
Oh my gosh, we've had enough.
Yes,
for sure. For sure.
We want nice, normal days.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
We have a lot to do. We're trying to rebuild here.
That's right.
Well, I so appreciate you, Gary. Thanks for all you do, and welcome everybody. It's going to be a bright and beautiful day, it seems, and thankfully we've got some rain, which is always good news. So I'm thrilled to join you this morning. I hope you've got a cup of coffee in front of you. I definitely do this morning. And we're going to talk about one of our biggest questions facing our community. What kind of economy does Maui need for the future? And how do we actually build it? So today I want to talk about the industries that support us today, why Maui's economy is different from every other county in Hawaii, what our economic diversification really means, what industries maybe make sense for us to grow and attract, and what's standing in our way. And most importantly, what can we do about it? Because at the end of the day, our economy is what sustains us. And so we have to look at some of these roadblocks and say, what is it we're going to do to move forward? And why are we going to do that? And why is it important to our entire community? So, before we can go off into how do we diversify our economy, right? How do we move forward in a big, grand way? It's important to go back and look at where we came from. What's Maui's economic story? So we first have to remember where we came from, right? Because Maui has reinvented its economy before. We were for generations an agricultural community. Even when I moved here in 1981, our big industries were pineapple and sugar. I have roots in working for Maui Land and Pineapple Company. I worked out of the Kapalua development side. It was, we had pineapple everywhere, right? We had sugarcane everywhere. And Maui's economy was doing very well. We had, so many more people employed. And at that time, we saw more infrastructure being built, and our population was growing. And these industries weren't just farms. They created jobs. They supported transportation systems. They helped build communities. Those big companies helped build housing for their employees back then. They generated businesses for contractors, suppliers, retailers, banks, restaurants, and countless other businesses. And then the economy changed as we saw pineapple decline, then sugar decline, right? Maui was the Maui was the longest operating sugar mill in the entire state. And, that closed operations in 2016. And then we had tourism. Along the way, as we had this huge agricultural economy, the community chose to pivot for more diversified jobs back in the 60s. We pivoted to going into tourism so that we'd have a different level of jobs, people who could work at many different levels, both in service of the industry, in management of the industry, in marketing of the industry. Tourism was seen back in the 60s as a way to create those higher paying, diverse types of jobs, right? You also have in tourism with hotels, you've got engineering departments. You've got all sorts of other ancillary businesses that service the hotels. You've got landscaping departments where they outsource landscaping work. It created a lot of industries. And as we've talked about before, many industries followed that. And then in the 80s, in 1982, you have the Maui Research and Technology Park, where we look to pivot into high tech, where Senator Inouye brought a supercomputer to Maui to help diversify our economy in a very different way. So previous generations have intentionally created new economic engines here. And our responsibility now is to work on building the next one and to leverage off what we currently have and build forward. So, as time went on, right, tourism is still our number one economic engine. It became the dominant revenue generator for Maui. And think about that for a moment, right? As we haven't stayed frozen in time, we've transitioned. But we still are looking at models that work. And that's an important reminder, because sometimes when we talk about economic diversification, it sounds as though transforming our economy is impossible, right? It's a huge task. It can't be done, yet we've done it before. The challenge is with economic development is it doesn't happen overnight. And like we talk about housing, and we talk about businesses getting started and sustaining our community and being more resilient, it requires infrastructure, it requires education, it requires investment, it requires entrepreneurs, it requires government policies that enable, not impede, business creation. And we're hearing that we've got decades of layers that are impeding progress right now. And importantly, it requires a clear idea of what we are trying to build. Tourism subsequently brought extraordinary economic opportunity to Maui. It created hotels and restaurants, activities and attractions, retail, transportation, construction, real estate, professional services, entertainment, agricultural farms supplying restaurants, local products sold, and thousands upon thousands of jobs. And when you think about all of that, and you think about what did we benefit from in tourism in ways that we don't expect, would we have all these flights where we can travel abroad without tourism? The tourism that brought people in also helps take our residents and our ohanas out to other places. It gives us more flexibility. Would we have all these locally made products without agriculture? But yet agriculture was greatly supported. Many farms are greatly supported by the visitor industry because of the produce that's bought from those local farms. So when somebody says we should diversify away from tourism, I think we need to be very careful about that language. Economic diversification should not mean abandoning industries that work. It means that we should strengthen the foundation underneath them while creating additional economic engines so that when one sector declines, Maui doesn't fall with it. And COVID taught us that. In August of 2023, the wildfires taught us that again. The sudden disruption to tourism doesn't affect only hotels. It reaches the restaurant server, the activity company, the florist, the farmer, the laundry companies, transportation companies, retailers, musicians. We saw that. We did a musicians program in a big way because when they didn't have the tourism activity, many musicians were out of work. The contractor, the advertiser, the accountant, really, and eventually almost everyone else, because that engine also contributes when it's working well. and it has been working well for generations. It creates a tax base that we all benefit from. So that's why economists, say that, right, you need to attract industries that have an economic multiplier, and tourism certainly is one of those industries. One industry's spending becomes another industry's income. So again, as tourism diversified and we brought more people here, for example, they wanted shopping experiences while they're here. They fell in love with Maui. They wanted to take things from Maui home. That generated another industry, right? Retail. And retail, right, helps create more jobs and brings in new income in that industry. And people thrive on that retail industry. So at the core of the industries we try to attract, it matters to everyone. Even if you don't personally work in that particular industry, that industry matters to all of our people when you look at the tremendous trickle-down effect that it has. Now, I'm told there used to be a video I've heard for the 20 years I've been with the Chamber. I've never seen it. I think it was one time created by the visitor industry about the trickle-down of every dollar that was created by the visitor industry. And it was a video supposedly that showed how a hotel brought in the dollar, how that dollar passed on to an employee, how the employee went shopping in the local community and passed on to that other business, and so on and so forth. And I'm told it was an absolutely fabulous video. And we need that education again. We need people to understand not only our history and how the money made in different industries trickles out. In agriculture, again, how agriculture not only benefited from the hotel industry, but is benefiting from restaurant and retail and weddings and events and new manufactured products. And it's trickled down. So we need to understand the complexity of economic development. And yet remember that we have reinvented our economy before in big ways, from agriculture to the visitor industry to technology. And now we're working on the next Maui economy. But to do that, we also have to understand where we are today. And there are some great encouraging signs. In the first quarter of 2026, Maui County added approximately 700 non-agricultural wage and salary jobs compared to the first quarter of 2025, a gain of about 0.9%. Accommodations added roughly 300 jobs. Now, we are rebuilding from after the wildfires. I hate the title of this category. It's called Natural Resources, Mining, and Construction. But that category, primarily construction, added roughly 300 jobs, which is good news. And again, this is over a period of time, and I will share some other news about construction that's alarming. But it tells us something. Two of our growth areas remain closely connected, tourism and construction. And construction itself is being significantly driven right now by recovery, rebuilding, housing, and infrastructure needs. So UHERO, the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization, known as UHERO, has described construction as one of the strongest parts of Hawaii's economy, with Maui rebuilding adding substantially to that activity. But rebuilding isn't a permanent economic diversification strategy. Eventually, reconstruction peaks. Eventually, projects are completed. So the question will be, what are we building underneath that temporary construction surge that will produce income 10, 15, and 20 years from now, right? And we've got a problem right now because as permits are delayed, we're hearing from some construction industries saying, we have the business, but we're having to lay off employees right now because we don't have the permits to move forward and we don't have the work for them without the permit. So that's a challenge. And where is tourism? Well, tourism is continuing the recovery. It's a fascinating recovery. In June 2026, Maui welcomed roughly 229,000 visitors, about 1% more than June of last year. So we are rebuilding. Visitor spending was approximately $516 million, also about 1% higher. Yet Maui's average daily visitor census was significantly lower than a year earlier. So that's really important to think about because it reinforces one idea we've discussed many times on this program. The goal shouldn't be necessarily the greatest possible number of visitors. It should be a healthy visitor economy that creates strong economic value while respecting our residents, our environment, our culture, and our infrastructure capacity. Can we have visitors who stay in appropriate accommodations, spend at local businesses, eat at locally owned restaurants, purchase Maui-made products, experience local agriculture and learn about it, support local artists, respect our cultural places and learn more about them and get to understand them, and leave Maui economically stronger? So this is a very different question from people simply asking, well, how many visitors came? How much is it this time? Or are we overcrowded again? Right? And I believe, and the Chamber has long believed, and our community, many of us have been involved in regenerative tourism, and we believe that tourism can be better managed. But we need to come together on what that looks like. And we also need to remember that tourism remains and will remain for a very long time one of our most powerful economic assets. And we need to think broader sometimes about what that means. The Maui brand is known around the world. Businesses in almost every destination would love to possess the brand equity Maui already has. So we don't want to diminish that asset. We want to leverage it, right? Can tourism help agriculture? Absolutely. Farm tours, farm-to-table restaurants, local foods, coffee, chocolate, tea, flowers, fruit, value-added products. Can tourism benefit manufacturing? Absolutely, it is. Again, we do the Made in Maui County Festival, and that's exactly what this program looks at is how do we discover products here, have visitors take them home, have them reorder them online, and introduce the mainland and the world buyers to products from Maui County. And so many of our products come from our agricultural products. Can tourism support technology? Absolutely. Conferences and professional meetings bring innovators to Maui. The AMOS conference is an excellent example of Maui leveraging its location and technical expertise to connect the international space and technology community with us. Can tourism support creative economy? Yes, of course. Music, film, photography, art, fashion, cultural experiences, design, culinary innovation. All of these things can come from industry. So rather than saying tourism or diversification, I believe the better question is, how do we leverage tourism to help build diversification further, right? That's a more powerful economic strategy, right? It's not replacing tourism because tourism works. It's looking at how we continue to leverage tourism in a way to help build further diversification. And that's important because that's a significant strategy, right? We're not trying to replace. We're trying to add value and. So it's also important to look at why we're so different from other counties in the state, because a lot of our drive for our economic strategy also comes from what's happening across the state in terms of how does the state build an economic development strategy and leverage resources across the entire state. So I want to look a little deeper this morning because Maui County cannot simply copy Oahu, Hawaii Island, or Kauai, right? We have to understand what makes our economic geography very different. So first, let's talk about population. The Census Bureau estimates Maui County's population at approximately 160,600 people. That's actually about 2.5% below the county's 2020 population base. And we know that we've been losing people. And that matters enormously. We're losing families. But also we're losing business customers. We're losing workers for our industry, right? We're losing taxpayers that government needs. Schools have been losing students. So when young families leave because they cannot find housing or economic opportunity here, we don't simply lose population. We lose our workforce, our future workforce. We lose teachers, nurses, tradespeople, entrepreneurs, potential business owners, and sometimes we lose generations of family connection on Maui. So let's also consider our geography. We're a very unique county in the state because Maui County serves Maui, Molokai, and Lanai, each with distinctly different economies, populations, and infrastructure needs. So that makes our economic development considerably more complicated. A strategy that works for Kahului, Maui may not work on Molokai. A visitor strategy appropriate for Wailea may be entirely inappropriate for Lanai and Hana. Agricultural changes and challenges differ by island, right? We often hear about invasive pests, and sometimes we hear about, well, they're on the big island and we're doing everything we can to keep them from getting here. But as food and plants and things transfer across the island, sometimes those challenges transfer across the island. Transportation on each island differs. Water differs. Healthcare access differs. Energy systems differ, right? Big Island has geothermal energy as an example. And yet one county government is serving Maui, Molokai, and Lanai. So as we talk about things, right, we need to understand nuances and differences. Another big thing is we have to understand some of the critical things that are important to our lifelines, both for resident and commercial. Kahului Harbor is Maui's only commercial deep draft harbor. Other islands have two. So we only have one where our major shipping comes in. So think about that from an economic implication. For food, building materials, vehicles, consumer products, business supplies, fuel, and many of the other essential goods that flow through one principal commercial gateway. That makes harbor capacity, resiliency, and transportation infrastructure an economic issue. It's not just a shipping issue, right? If there's damage to that harbor, there is going to be a supply issue. And then when we see shipping costs rise, it's a big issue because as shipping costs rise, businesses pay more. When businesses pay more, consumers eventually pay more, right? Which is something we talked about with the Young Brother rate increases. Not two, but one, not one, but two this year in 2026. When harbor operations are disrupted, the effects can move rapidly across the island. And because Hawaii imports such a large share of what we consume, those vulnerabilities become especially important. So what we're going to do is think about that for a moment as we take a brief commercial break. And what we're next going to do is look at how Maui compares to our sister islands. And we'll be back in just a moment after a brief word about the Maui Chamber of Commerce.
Maui thrives when our businesses, both large and small, succeed, and at the Maui Chamber of Commerce, they believe in the power of local businesses in shaping our island's future. From advocacy to networking, education to economic growth, the Maui Chamber has your interest whether you are a new startup or a long-time local favorite. The Maui Chamber of Commerce connects you with the tools, resources, and support that you need to grow, thrive, and give back to the community. Now is the time to stand together and join the movement. Remember to strengthen our community by listening to Business Matters, the weekly radio show and podcast at 7:05 a.m. every Tuesday over KAOI AM, hosted by Pam Toompop. The show addresses state and county issues with important guests every week. Listen to Business Matters every Tuesday at 7:05 a.m. just after the news. All right, welcome back to Business Matters. And now here's your host, Pam Toompop. You're back, Pam.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. I just listened to that commercial and it said with important guests every week. And for a couple of weeks, we haven't been doing guests.
Yes.
So my apologies for that. We're going to change some of our commercials. But and the reason we haven't been doing that is because we right now are focused on and want to share with you, all of our community members, where we're looking and what our visioning is as we look forward to diversifying Maui and to addressing our critical needs like housing and the connectedness of that. And so we're purposely taking a intentional break, not because we don't want to have visitors on. We are going to be getting to a whole series of visitors as we dive deeper, but wanting to set the framework for thinking about where we are now and our economic diversification and the importance of infrastructure and planning and building things correctly to create the platform for where we need to go. And this is a critical time, and as everybody knows, it's also an election year. I hope everybody is getting out and voting. We continue to see low numbers in voting, both in the primary. They usually go up, of course, in the general election. But it's important to get out and have your voice heard. It's important to look at the candidates and research the candidates and understand their platform and where they stand on issues important to you. So just a brief commercial break for civic engagement. But again, all of this is important in terms of what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is where are we going now, right? So let's take a look again as we look at our economic diversification and where we fit in. We fit in an island state. So Maui County has its own uniqueness. And yet when we talk about state economic development and diversification, we have the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. You might notice that they specifically called out tourism, understanding at the state level tourism is such a huge part of our economic engine. And they serve the entire state. So, we also want to look at, as we're looking at building opportunities, it's important to look at what our sister islands have, what's going on there. Oahu, of course, we know has the state's largest population, and it's the seat of state government. The University of Hawaii at Manoa is there, and they have other campuses as well. They have major medical institutions, corporate headquarters for many of the companies and businesses, like the banking institutions that we see across all islands. But the corporate headquarters are in Oahu, as they are for many other major companies. Huge federal and defense economy on Oahu. And defense activity statewide represents billions of dollars in economic activity and supports substantial civilian and contractor employment. So most of that economic engine, though, is concentrated on Oahu. Hawaii Island has Pohakuloa, a training area that is the largest Department of Defense installation in Hawaii by land area, along with major astronomy assets, significant agriculture, multiple population centers, and a very different land base, of course. And then, they've got Kona Kahala and the Hilo Chamber of Commerce. So 2 Chamber of Commerces on that island because very different centers based on how the island is situated. So very unique. Kauai has the Pacific Missile Range Facility at Barking Sands, a globally important defense and technology installation, in addition to its visitor industry and agriculture. So I do want to be precise here because Maui does have the Hawaii National Guard units and facilities. But we do not have a major active duty military installation comparable economically to the Joint Base at Pearl Harbor, Hickam on Oahu, or the Pohakuloa on Hawaii Island, or PMRF on Kauai, and that matters because military installations create economic stabilization. Federal salaries continue even when tourism declines. Defense contracts bring outside dollars into an economy. They support engineering, construction, cybersecurity, logistics, technology, and professional services. So Maui has far less of that stabilizing defense economy than several of our sister islands. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we need to be particularly intentional about creating other traded industries that sell products or services beyond Maui and bring new dollars back into Maui. And that's an important distinction. If I spend $10 at a Maui business and that business spends it somewhere else on Maui, we're circulating local money, right? So I hope everybody knows we always talk about buy local, buy Maui first. And that's really good. That's what we can do here to insulate our economy. But when a Maui company sells a product, say to California, provides a professional service to Seattle, licenses technology to Japan, creates a software product that sells internationally, ships Maui-grown value-added foods across the nation, or brings in outside research and investment dollars here, right? Like we saw on Mauna Kea, we had opportunities that brought in global investment, right? When new money enters our economy, that makes an expert-oriented or traded industry so powerful. So as we see bigger industries come into Maui that help us diversify our economy and export products out, that is a game changer. That is really important. It's an important diversification conversion that can be much more sophisticated and something we need to examine as we're looking at different industries and where we should diversify and why. So here's the big question, and it's a question we're asking. We're asking government to answer. You know, what is the plan? What industry should we pursue? Because we don't want to chase every shiny new object. So we have to ask these questions. What fits for Maui? What industries build on the strengths that we already possess? What sectors can pay wages that justify Maui's cost of living and attainable housing? What industries use relatively little land and infrastructure but have big impacts? Which can sell outside of our islands? Which can connect with existing businesses? Which can create career ladders for our children? So we see many different promising areas. One of the first is value-added agriculture and food manufacturing. And that means to do that, we also have to sustain our agriculture, and we have some challenges there. We're talking about a lot of different things that can hamper agriculture that we need to focus on. But agriculture still remains a very vital part of Maui's future. And we cannot survive, with agriculture on nostalgia. It has to work economically. So Maui County's own agricultural strategy identifies the economic viability of producers as a central challenge. So how do we overcome that, and what are we trying to overcome? Well, just like housing prices are rising, land is rising. Farmers face expensive land costs, expensive water, labor shortages, shipping costs, again, went up twice with Young Brothers this year, equipment costs, feral animals. Let's talk excess deer that's creating all sorts of havoc that we're working to get under control. And as a result, instead of having open lands, we're now fencing land because the access deer problem is so big. Housing challenges for farm workers and difficulty achieving the scale necessary to compare against mainland agriculture, sometimes even compare against other sister islands agriculture. So one strategy is to move up the value chain and look at, instead of selling the mango, what products can we create from the mango? Instead of growing tea, can we produce it, process it, brand it, package it, and export it? How about coffee, cacao, honey, sauces, seasonings, baked goods, beverages, natural beauty natural beauty products, essential oils, specialty foods, pet products, nutraceuticals where appropriate, right? We have a robust and diverse agriculture, and so many businesses can take advantage of it, and many are. The more value we add locally, the more economic activity stays here and brings dollars in from abroad. And we have a great crown jewel. We have an asset, the Maui Food Innovation Center at UH Maui College, which was specifically designed to help food entrepreneurs develop and scale products. We have talented farmers. We have chefs who are featuring local produce on the menu. We have manufacturers who are featuring local products on the menu and in their products. We have the Made in Maui County Festival, who is helping to bring and attract buyers not only from across the state, but from the mainland, from outside. We have buyers coming in from Japan and other locations, but we are working to be more recognized. We are building a globally recognized brand. We have a hospitality industry that can serve our first customer and have showrooms in the hotels that showcase in their stores locally made products, right? We have connected these systems. And imagine if we deliberately connect these systems even more. We're seeing hotels commit to purchasing more locally produce products and from farmers, right? We're seeing restaurants commit to incorporating more Maui-grown food. We're seeing gift shops feature Maui-made products. We see visitors discovering more of these products while here, reading the menus on where the beef comes from, where the veggies come from, where the fruit is coming from. We're teaching our culture in different ways through how we share Maui with visitors and the world abroad. They learn about our culture. They learn about our aloha. They learn about the hard work the farmers put into producing these products. And they connect with us in those ways. That is economic diversification, built through tourism rather than against tourism, but leveraging that economic engine. Technology, data, space, and advanced professional services are something we don't want to forget about. Maui has an established technology story, and sometimes we forget about it. Interestingly enough, when I was on Akaku on Saturday night, there was discussion about the tech park and the great exciting things happening at the Maui Research and Technology Park out in Kihei. Sometimes people don't even know we have a Maui Research and Technology Park out in Kihei, and it shouldn't be a hidden story. I used to work for the Maui Economic Development Board, and we worked on economic diversification and technology development for decades. So they have been doing amazing things. We have the Advanced Maui Optical and Space Surveillance Technology Conference Center, the AMOS Conference, that brings together leaders in the space domain from far and wide to discuss this industry and create awareness on the technology and what it means. And that doesn't mean that Maui's trying to be Silicon Valley. We shouldn't try to do that. We're looking for niches where Maui has credibility, right? And we do. Optics, space surveillance, remote sensing, data analysis, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence applications, engineering, environmental monitoring, ocean technology, and many other specialized research areas. The beauty of knowledge industries is that the product often doesn't need to leave through Kahului Harbor. It can travel through fiber and bandwidth. And that's one of the reasons that broadband infrastructure is economic infrastructure. And how lucky are we with the development that Hawaiian Tel and others are building to strengthen our broadband infrastructure and be an island that is fully enabled. Right? A Maui engineer can serve a mainland client. A software developer in Kihei can build a global market. A design firm can serve Tokyo. Cyber security professionals can work for a company in Washington, D.C., while still supporting a lot of work here locally. A local entrepreneur can operate online with customers from around the world. This allows us to generate mainland level, global level revenue while creating Maui-based careers that are higher paying jobs for future generations. And often the kinds of jobs future generations are actively seeking. And if we don't have it here, that means they're often staying on the continent after going to college and finding jobs there, interning there. If we have more of those jobs here, they can intern here. They can come back. In everything we do, we have to look at not only the technology climate, but we have to look at our energy, water as well. We can become a living laboratory for island sustainability. Think about the challenges we already need to solve: renewable energy, energy storage, grid resiliency, water conversion, water reuse, fire prevention, drought, climate adaptation, recycling, food security, transportation electrification. Why not turn some of our problems into industries? Instead of purchasing solutions created somewhere else, why can't Maui develop them? Islands around the world face many of the same challenges. If Maui companies can develop solutions for water, energy, agriculture, wildfire resistance, or island infrastructure, those technologies have markets throughout the Pacific and beyond. The annual Hawaii Energy Conference organized by MEDB is another example of an existing platform we can leverage. We can create those solutions here and create those jobs here. Healthcare and the longevity economy is essential. It is another sector with significant potential. We already need more physicians, nurses, technicians, mental health professionals, caregivers, and specialists. Our aging population increases demand. But can we think beyond simply filling shortages? Well, we have to. We have to, because these shortages are hurting our ohanas. We hear all the time the wait times to get in to see a doctor. We hear about the doctor and nurse shortages, and we have a hard time attracting them when we don't have housing for them. And we've got a housing shortage. But Maui could be stronger in telehealth, remote diagnostics, wellness innovation, rehabilitation, in our fabulous environment, healthy aging. We can create medical training partnerships. We already have one of the strongest destination brands in the world to leverage off of. There may be many responsible ways to combine healthcare, wellness, research, hospitality, and technology without turning healthcare into tourism. Although medical tourism is a big industry, and they don't stay very long. They come, they go, they enjoy, they rejuvenate, and they go home. But it's a big industry and a higher paying industry in the tourism arena. And it supports more healthcare providers wanting to work here. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And healthcare jobs have another major advantage, right? They're here and they serve us first. In a time of a healthcare crisis, which we talk about, we need to find new ways. We also have a lot of discussion these days on creative industries and the cultural economy. And I love that discussion. It's something that I've worked in for many, many decades. Film, television, we used to call it multimedia, now it's called digital media. Music, art, design, animation, photography, fashion, culinary arts, cultural enterprises, our amazing cultural history, our identity. All of those things benefit from creative industries in the cultural economy, right? And we have these industries, but we could have more. These industries are such an asset to Maui's identity. Okay, yes, we have to be careful. We have to make sure that culture should not simply be commodified. I'm not suggesting that. But we have seen things where we share our culture and we get a strong global response. The strongest cultural economy is one where local creators retain ownership, intellectual property, authenticity, and economic benefits. And it's where they get to shine. How many artists, musicians, photographers do we have? Do we not shine in culinary arts? We even became a location for Pacific Rim cuisine was created in Hawaii, right? We have so many amazing artists. that we have so much room to grow and leverage this in new ways. And we've been advancing with the Maui, excuse me, I can't even think of my own festival name, with the Maui County, the annual Made in Maui County Festival, sponsored by Hawaiian Airlines. That is really helping us advance manufacturing. And manufacturing is advancing through other partners like the University of Hawaii Maui College Food Innovation Center, right, through other things that we're doing. And now they're moving into fashion tech, which is another area. But we are working hard to advance our small-scale manufacturing. Traditional heavy manufacturing is difficult, right? Bringing in a lot of equipment is costly. But there are so many ways that we can leverage what we already have and move into more manufacturing here without having to move manufacturing over to vast distances. Because sometimes when companies grow and scale, they move outside of Maui. So we want to focus on specialized, high-value, low-weight manufacturing and how it can work differently here, right? And there's still things we're going to have to bring in to manufacture. We still don't have, we're not producing jars for jams and jelly, so there's still going to things we have to bring in. We are seeing, though, more locally produced fabric. So now more clothing can be sewn, not only printed, have fabric printed in Hawaii to meet the design needs of our designers, but also printed materials and sewing in Hawaii on higher levels. So that's great. And we're seeing lots of growth areas. But there's big arenas now in specialty food, beauty and wellness, again, with our island environment that people see as pristine and healthy. And places like Japan have great reverence for beauty and wellness. We have created different things, including medical devices and solutions during COVID. We can look at marine technology, agricultural technology, component building and technology, 3D fabrication. We've got great makers here on island who've been doing amazing things in 3D. We can create research equipment, consumer products. These are areas where shipping costs are less overwhelming because the value of the product has a high relative impact to its weight in terms of we don't have to deal with big shipping costs. So there are so many amazing things. And we have in the state level the High Technology Development Corporation, which supports manufacturing, innovation, ag technology, and dual-use technologies. We are trying to aggressively help Maui companies capture these resources. So it's really important to recognize some of the systems across our state and why they are so important. And so as we look at all of these things, this is sort of going to be a part one of two parts, right? How do we move forward? On our next talk next week, we're going to move from all of these opportunities that we're talking about today, all of these things and the reasons why we're doing it, right? What the impact is for economic diversification, because it gives us resiliency, because it builds a workforce, because it creates higher paying jobs. And at the end of the day, because it supports our ohana now, and we want these activities to support our ohana for future generations. We want our children and our children's children to be able to stay on Maui. We want them to be able to live where they call home, to not have to move away and invest somewhere else, where years down the road, all they wish is they could return back home to Maui. And sometimes that doesn't happen now. Families come back to visit. We truly appreciate the Come Aina, Come Home program that was held in Lahaina, who brought residents back and brought families back home. And so many said they wish they could live here back home full time, right? So what we want to do is continue the discussion next week on what's hampering our economic growth at this time. What are some of the solutions that we need to put in place? In those solutions, how can we learn from successful states? That doesn't mean we want to emulate everything they do. It just means that when looking abroad, and especially in these areas, remember, every other state in the nation is trying to attract the economic diversification that I just mentioned, right? Some states are more rural and have more agriculture. Some states have more technology. Some states have more manufacturing. The resilient states have more diversity. So we want to understand what's being done elsewhere, but that doesn't mean that we want to completely emulate that. But if we don't look at other examples abroad, and not just states, we need to look at other countries as well. What are some of the amazing feats that other countries are accomplishing in their regions? Many other places are also, islands, in the Pacific or elsewhere. What can we learn from these different examples that we can bring back and further Maui's economic agenda? And agenda is kind of an interesting word, right? It sounds self-serving sometimes, but that's not what I mean by agenda. I mean, we really need to focus on what should Maui actually do, right? Because what we're trying to do is our agenda should be to protect and strengthen the industries we already have. The people who love the industries they're working in and working hard. We want to protect tourism and strengthen it, agriculture, construction, real estate, retail, healthcare, professional services, small businesses, the industries that employ our people today, right? And we're not seeking diversification that would hamper any of that. We're not seeking replacement. We're seeking advancement. So I hope you've enjoyed this first part to a two-part series on what our plan is for diversifying our economy. I want to thank you, as always, for joining this show. I hope you've learned something interesting today. I hope you've gotten some thought-provoking ideas. Please continue to think about it. Have this discussion in your household and share it with others. And I hope you'll join us again next Tuesday morning for Business Matters. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful week. Blessings and aloha. Support local, stay engaged, keep thinking about Maui's future. Ahuyo.